And we are live. Hey guys, welcome back to another Rankable episode 35. I'm your host as usual, Jared Thomas, Senior Account Executive at iPullRank. We have a special episode today. We want to talk about the future of sports betting industry. So for you guys who don't, you guys know me. I'm a big gambler. I love this space so much. I love sports. These are two of my favorite things. And I have a very special guest with us today. Somebody I've met very early in my career, somebody who's definitely been very a good friend and somebody who's been very helpful throughout my career. So he has 20 plus years of experience working in executive roles at some of the biggest agencies and holding companies in the world, such as Initiative, Harvest, MDC Media Partners. He was the CMO of tech giant Seismic, and recently was the Chief Communication Officer at IPG Media Brands, where he was responsible for internal, external communications, the firm's social media channels across the global network. And now he's the VP of Communications for one of the biggest brands in the sports gambling world, FanDuel. So I'd like to introduce to everybody our guest today, Chris Jones.
Jared, thank you for having me. I'm really super excited to be here. So yeah, we go back a long way, you and I. It makes me feel old because you still got that great smile. I got a little bit less hair, but you have that great smile.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. It's a pleasure, man. Once we started this, I was like, I have to get you on somehow, some way, and I'm just glad we
worked
it happen. Yep. So definitely, but I would love to, start for everybody in the audience. So what we're going to talk about, if you guys know FanDuel, it's one of the biggest players in the sports, gambling space, right? So if you've seen them on the commercials, you've seen them on the ESPN, you've seen them in, your local stadiums and parks and things of that nature. And what we want to talk about is how they've grown. And I would love to hear from you, Chris, or if you're going to start at the beginning. Just tell us about your journey from the industry, from the agency industry, and kind of leading up to now, and what some of those skills that you've learned in the agency world and how they translated to a brand like FanDuel.
Sure. So FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and our daily fantasy product is one of the top 2 fantasy products in the industry, and our casino products are also among the top 1 or 2 or 3 mobile operators, that is, in country. So we have the largest market share in the country in the space. Got exciting news yesterday that the state of New York is moving towards legalizing and regulating mobile sports gambling. I know it's exciting for you and for people who drive through the Lincoln Tunnel to head over to New Jersey, because it's been legal there for quite a while. My journey's been a unique one. It's a hybrid of a bunch of different roles in a bunch of different places, and I'm sure we'll get into that and why. But to answer your initial question, I spent 15 years-ish at 3 or 4 holding companies. So IPG, I had 2 tours of duty at IPG, most recently Chief Communications Officer there, working for Darryl Lee. I worked for Havas for a while in a North America specific role. I spent a bulk of my time, my first tour at IPG with Initiative, very, very rewarding time. I'd say the highlight of that is, winning the Amazon business, being a part of the team that helped win the Amazon business there was a really humble experience. Yeah, it's still a large client for IPG to this day. And I also, got to work for Martin Cass, who's a pretty smart guy in his own right, helped to build Assembly, which was one of the first data-minded, data-led media agencies built from effectively scratch over at MDC. And we won Agency of the Year there. We won Agency of the Year at Havas. So I've worked for some really smart people in the space. How has it gotten me to FanDuel? I don't know if it got me to FanDuel. I think I've, a lot of agency people, after spending almost 2 decades in that space, typically, I won't speak for everyone, but a lot of them want to round out their experience and have that client side role. I had junior level client side roles. I worked at Marsh McLennan, financial services industry, for several years. I started my career as an intern and part-time employee at ESPN. So I'd been on the sell side. I worked at Univision on a consulting basis. So I'd had other experiences, but I really had not had a senior level role on the client side. And this was a tremendous opportunity in a space that's growing incredibly. To date, there's only about a dozen, for your audience's benefit, there's only about a dozen states in the union that have legalized mobile sports betting. So we still have a long way to go. Some big states, New York being the most significant one recently, but California is still not legal. Texas is still not legal. Georgia is still not legal. So there are some significant states to go. So this industry is only going to grow further and faster. And that, for me, that was a very enticing opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to know, like you mentioned the Amazon pitch. Before we go into what you're
Sure.
currently doing, I would love to know like what goes in, because I obviously we're at an agency here at iPullRank, but I would love to know what went into that type of pitch, and how did you lead into the agency world, because you were already on the client side. Was it like, hey, what was that story
So,
like?
Amazon is notoriously private and remains such to this
Yeah.
day. So that was a challenging pitch in that the directives in the RFP were very, very specific. They wanted to achieve very specific things in that RFP. It was the first media agency of record relationship, I believe, if I'm correct, that they were entering into. Little details down to like, don't put a welcome sign in the lobby saying welcome Amazon, because we don't want people to know we're in your building. Right. So they were, and that's fine. You have to just, be mindful that that's the kind of client you're, and that's the comfort level that they want, need, and desire for their business. And so to answer your question, I think the reason why, I know the reason why they won, because they told us, many of the agencies tried to out tech the tech guys. So no one's tech with the exception of maybe Google or Oracle is better than Amazon's, right? And a lot of the agencies in the media world tried to impress the Amazon people with the depth of their media and advertising technology. And I think that was probably the wrong approach. Excuse me. Jim Elms, the CEO of Initiative at the time, and Matt Seiler, who was running IPG prior to Daryl, they took the approach of let's show them who we are. Let's make this more about our people and our expertise in the space and less about our technology. Down to the point where the presentation, which I certainly did not lead the presentation, there's a lot of other smart people who did that, but played a role in helping in that. We didn't use a PowerPoint deck. Our designer designed these giant Post-it notes, and they were all around the room. And instead of they were designed, but they stuck on the walls. And so instead of clicking the Amazon folks through a deck, we walked them through and talked them through in a much more personal way. Wow. It was unique because they started moving the Post-it notes around. They were so engaged by this. They were like, no, this actually goes over here. And we think this goes over there. And we knew I don't say we knew we had them, because you never feel like you have an account like that until you actually sign a contract. But we knew we had them engaged. And that led to a series of other follow-up meetings. And eventually they selected us as their agency. And I think that's like going on a 10-year relationship now. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. But the creativity that took into it, what I love that you said about that story is that you took a step back and said, look, we're not going to try to out tech the tech guys, right? You have to know who you are, and you have to know who your audience is. And that's what the beauty of that is. And then to say that, hey, we're going to walk them through a pitch, literally, I think that's genius.
It was a risk. I wasn't that. I wasn't the final decision maker or final arbiter of that decision, but there were several really smart people, who were, and I was just happy to play, small roles in that process. It was a highlight of my time at Initiative for sure.
For sure. That's an amazing story. And then, as far as, getting back into FanDuel and the sports betting industry. So as we know, that's one of the fastest growing industries out there. And I've always been curious, like from a marketing perspective, how has the brand been able to kind of balance the need to drive more users for the platform while also promoting that responsible gambling that we spoke about earlier?
Sure. So obviously it's a customer acquisition business. We're in a very tough battle every day with very well-funded competitors like ourselves, and you have to be thoughtful about every time you enter into a state, who you're going to partner with, whether that's a league or a team or a media company. We have dozens of those type of partnerships around the country, so that fuels a lot of the marketing wheel, if you will, the flywheel of how we go and accumulate customers. We also have a large content team and social team that certainly pull quite a bit of weight as well. To answer your second question, there is no more existential threat to the business, the industry, not FanDuel specifically, but to the mobile sports wagering industry, than making sure that we self-regulate through a series of responsible gaming activities. And I'm happy to say that I was hired in part to help build that. And we're making in my first year here, we're making some real big headway. So we're the only mobile sports operator to partner, with the American Gaming Association. So we have a full partnership with them on their what they refer to as Have a Game Plan campaign. It's an education campaign that partners with leagues and teams to educate customers who, let's be honest, as every state opens up, there's a whole new slew of customers that need to understand how to use the product. And so it really takes, so for example, the PGA Tour is also a partner in this campaign. So their phraseology for it is have a game plan, know when to lay up. So the Masters is ongoing today, right? So that's kind of synonym or for us, or example for us. You got to know what your limit is. And so we have built a product in our product where you can set wage limits, deposit limits, time limits, all sorts of limits on your own behavior. So that way you don't get too far afield of your own personal budget. At our core, FanDuel believes in being absurdly fan-focused. And what does that mean? We want to enhance the sports experience. We don't want to put anybody in jeopardy. And we want this to be a form of entertainment. And then we want that to be a form of entertainment employed safely within a budget. And so encouraging customers to do that is every bit a part of the challenge, almost as much as acquiring that customer. Because if we're not a brand that they can trust, then they're not going to be with us very long. And so we've done the partnership with the AGA, which is ongoing. We've got radio spots running with Entercom or Odyssey now. We're working with many of our league and team partners to do in-game venue education. We're doing a lot of digital stuff. There's a slew of things coming that have started and are continuing to come in that space. We've also partnered with Gamban, which is the largest international gaming blocking technology software. So if a customer does call our CS department, our customer service department, and says, I'm struggling with an addiction, the moral and ethical right thing to do is immediately help that person. So we do a couple things. One, we put them on our own self-identification list and we void them out of the platform so they cannot gamble anymore on our platform. Second thing we typically do, and it depends on the state because every regulation is different, we share that person's information with the state regulatory body, which is typically known as the Department of Gaming Enforcement, DGE. And then the third thing we do is now we're giving them this Gamban subscription. And we're walking them through how to set it up on their phone, family's phone, computer, and it'll block them from pretty much every gambling site in the United States and many of the offshore as well. And we'll pay for that subscription for them. That's part of the partnership. Because in the end, much in the same way the beer companies have driven responsible usage of their product, consumption of their products. You go to any ball game, you're going to have a beer. It enhances your viewing experience while you're watching the game. But they want that to happen in a safe environment so you can get back in your car and drive home, not impaired. We want the exact same thing. We want you to place a $50 bet, enjoy the experience, but we don't want that bet to potentially hurt your personal finances in any way.
That makes complete sense. But I'm curious too, what about the person that doesn't know they have a problem, right? So for instance, if I'm a big gambler, is there something on the platform that says, hey, you've lost X amount of dollars, or hey, be careful, you're kind of in the danger zone?
A really good question. So our risk and trading team and our customer service teams and our technology teams are perpetually monitoring the action within, and this happens in every gambling environment, perpetually monitoring the action of our customers. We have specific rules around, you cannot have duplicative accounts. If you have a duplicative account, we take you out of the platform permanently.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Your first account and your second account. You can't place bets when you're in a negative deposit or a negative withdrawal position. You can't place bets larger than what you have in your account to cover. So we do that as well. But it really, where we want to bring the RG discussion is a place of, hey, everyone knows now, because the beer companies have done such a good job of this, that you shouldn't have more than one or two beers during a game because, I got to drive home, right?
Yeah.
And everyone understands those metrics of, one or two beers or one or two wines starts to push you up against that impairment level that impairs your drive. We have to do that, and we are doing that with our customers as we speak, as the business matures. Again, keeping in mind that only about 12 states in the union are legal, and the Supreme Court only changed the laws, the PAPSA law that they struck down that legalized sports betting, mobile sports betting in the United States in 2018. So this is still a very nascent industry, which is super exciting because it's a canvas that we get to help create.
Absolutely. And that's only 12 though, man. I would have assumed more, man. But
There
that's
are
amazing.
varying degrees of legality, right?
Yeah.
So, but across the board, for sports book or horse racing and casino products, it's give or take 12. If you go on our website, there's a map and it breaks down exactly where we operate. I
Yeah.
encourage you to go find it.
Perfect. And then when you guys first came to the market, like I just remember as FanDuel, I remember not knowing what it was. I just remember seeing you guys plastered everywhere. So your branding was amazing, right? So the branding.
I can't take credit for that. That's our creative team and our CMO Mike Raffensperger, my boss. He's been leading this team for a long time. So they've done a really good job of pushing into the consciousness of the sports fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you knew where your audience was, right? You knew who your audience, you knew what type of market you wanted to tap into, and you guys eventually did that. And still to be only at 12 markets, right? And the growth potential there is massive, right? So could you tell us a little bit more about like what those regulations are? What are some of those challenges with some of the laws and how you have to communicate to your customer?
Sure. So we follow a pretty specific Know Your Customer KYC protocol as we start to bring them in. So, information that we take from them so we can communicate with them in the event there is a problem. That is typically required in every state, authenticating that they're over 18 or over 21, depending on the state. So those are things we have to, we have to do no matter what. We're also very careful, and we're regulated by day part for certain advertising, whether that be television, radio, etc. We're very mindful of, and we typically spend a lot of time around offers and making sure those offers are thoughtful in how we communicate them. So generosity marketing is a large part of how you get people to sign up. So
absolutely.
And so I'm sure you've seen our ads, bet 50 to win 500 or 55 to 1 odds for the Super Bowl, because it was Super Bowl 55 this year.
That's how you got me. So just letting you know.
Is that how we got you? Okay, good. So it's working. So it's working, and that's great. But so yes, there are a lot of, I don't say there's certain numbers, guidelines, regulations, restrictions that we follow. We would follow them anyway, but they are certainly in place at the state level, and they definitely impact who we partner with and why we partner with them, right? So we've got lots of different type of media partnerships across the board, league and team partnerships across the board, and those are driven by both geography. They're driven by the popularity of the sport. So football drives the bus for the industry in the sports book, but the NBA is very, very popular. Tennis is very popular. Golf is very popular. Really? So sports that, baseball has a following for sure. UFC. So catering your marketing to a lot of those different audiences is something we spend a great deal of time thinking about.
Absolutely. Because each segment of users or each segment of audience, right? UFC people are gonna have to speak differently than the NBA folks, right? The NFL.
And the offer needs to be different.
Exactly.
Those prop bets that you could bet on in football games, is Tyreek Hill going to score the first touchdown in the Super Bowl? Right. Exactly. That was a big prop bet. Is Bryson DeChambeau going to shoot 5 under par today at the Masters? Right. That's another. I don't know what our book currently has. I didn't look at it this morning to see what the prop bets were for the Masters. But my point is that catering to how you market things and your availability, both in the platform for existing customers and how you attract new customers, is all part of our thinking every day.
Absolutely. And I can imagine, as we all know, we're still here in the middle of a global pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. So when the sports ended, at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm sure that had to be a very critical moment for the business and just the industry as a whole. So I'm just curious, how has the pandemic, impacted the industry, and which ways has the industry changed since sports resumed? Sure.
So it's an interesting paradox. So sports shut down. Clearly had an impact on the business in the first quarter or second quarter and part of the third quarter of last year. However, what we learned was that people had interest in other, maybe not as mainstream sports. So things like international cricket or table tennis. These were things that were available in the sports book that people actually gambled on. We chuckle here in the States, but there's large followings of those sports in other parts of the world, right? And so, and within cultural subsets of the United States as well. When the return of sport occurred, we'll call it July, when the NBA bubble started again, and MLB started to play, the interest level in our product grew dramatically. And I think some of that's driven by consumer interest because it couldn't go to the games. You couldn't be in the arena. You've been locked in your home for so long. This kind of added a new level of excitement that maybe they didn't have before. And, we are the benefactor, of that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is driving the success of the business is that we play a positive role in delivering tax revenue for states. And so they all have various decisions they need to make around the economics of running their state in a post-COVID, post-pandemic world.
Yeah.
And, we and some of our other competitors can drive tax receipt value to the state budgets for everything from policemen to firemen to teachers to road repair to health and housing and whatever other things the state, and a respective state wants to spend it on. So that's also driven, I think, a lot of business opportunity because states now are moving faster. New York just yesterday, as we mentioned, moving into its budget. And we see a slew of other states, moving ahead. Michigan and Virginia, the most recent ones that have come online in January. So I think those two factors, the factor of being home and not being able to experience sports in person, or bringing your mobile device with you to a game and gambling, on our platform while at the game. And then also the impact that we can have on states who are considering deregulating and or regulating a mobile sports gaming environment within their state boundaries.
Yeah, so that's like a twofold thing. So it was like one, you guys had to adopt. Obviously, you had to pivot, in that Q2, Q3. But then, once sports resumed, the interest level grew. And
so I joined the company right as that started to happen, right? So you had the NBA bubble, the Major League Baseball bubble, for lack of a better word, or abbreviated schedule, and then the NFL launch and college football start-stop, all in this like compressed timeline. So our teams really worked very, very hard in the tail end of the third quarter and into the fourth quarter to make 2020 a successful year. And we've seen that success move forward. So it took us about 11 months to reach $1 billion in gross gaming revenue. It's like a handle measure. And it took us 28 days to do that in 2021, in the month of January.
Oh, wow.
So we've clearly accelerated the number of customers who are active in our platform. And we're very excited about that. And the other anecdote I'll share with you is on the day of the Super Bowl, the 3 top most downloaded apps in the world in the Apple App Store were number 1, TikTok, number 2, Robinhood, and number 3, FanDuel in the world. There
you go. Wow.
So we are seeing some really exciting trends as we enter into 2021. And the world starts to open up with the rise of the vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely. So it essentially it accelerated your business opportunities in terms of like states. Like I know New York, for instance, like they just approved, like you said, the gambling, they approved cannabis, they approved a lot of things, and because of the revenue they were losing because of the office spaces, people leaving, the tax revenue. So that's huge. And in a way, you guys were once again the benefactor and say, hey,
exactly. It was a positive impact on our business, and we're now working first hand in hand with Governor Cuomo's office to make sure that we are properly filing and being considered for a license, because we have not been, to be clear, FanDuel has not been approved or considered. No one has for a license. So we will participate in that process. And we work with all our state regulators to do that. And when they're ready to issue licenses, we want to operate in as many states as we're permitted to do so.
Amazing. And I know we're coming up on time, Chris, but I want to ask you this one last question. Like,
sure.
What's the best professional advice you've ever received throughout your career?
Don't skip steps. Don't skip steps. So I had an old colleague who said to me, Chris, you can't skip steps. There's going to be bumps in the road. There'll be twists and turns in your career. There'll be unexpected success, and there'll be some very disappointing failures. And all the while, the desire will be to like, get there faster, or how do I succeed faster? Yeah. And what happens is if you skip steps, you eventually reach a plateau where you're expected to know things and expected to have an experience level and expected to have a decision-making capacity or strategic thinking capability that you don't have because you skipped 3 steps on the way there. And now it's very hard to go back, regain that kind of experience, and apply it in a job that you're in. The audience who might be listening, I tried very hard to be humble about the roles that I took. I never really turned down a role. I can't remember ever turning down a job, but I was very thoughtful about, am I ready for this job? I think the case in point would be when Mark Rether asked me to be the CMO of Seismic, which was a very short run because the company eventually was broken up and sold. I knew, having been in an agency environment for 15 years and them being a leading ad tech provider that was selling almost semi-exclusively to agencies and their clients, that I knew enough about both ends of those two businesses where I could be an effective CMO because I put the time in for a decade plus at Havas, at MDC, at IPG, and I've learned from a lot of smart people. So my advice to the audience would be, don't skip steps, be humble, don't be in a rush, enjoy the journey. But when you get that opportunity, take it and run with it.
Absolutely. Put it in the work. Trust your gut too, man. Trust your gut.
Yeah, that's a fellow Bronx boy. I'll tell you, my gut is a big driver of how I make decisions. Yeah.
But thank you, man. I just want to say, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out your day for joining Rankable. I enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot from it. I look forward to seeing you guys in New York when that time happens.
We're coming. Hopefully, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. I should rephrase that. We're hoping to come.
Yep. And when you do, I'll be right there.
Right. Jared, you have a great day. Thank you for having me. Thank you to your audience.
Thank you again, Chris. Talk soon. And to everybody listening, we'll see you guys next week. We have Tammy Woods for SEO. We're going to talk about how to prepare for the Core Web Vitals update is coming in Google. So be prepared. We're going to have some actionable items for you guys, and we'll see you next week. All right. Take care.